That's true. That's true. The paradox, man. Young with no money or old with no time. Which one would you
Yep.
choose? Which one would you choose, my man?
I don't know. I kind of want to go back in time. I'm not gonna lie. I'm
I like
hating.
the money with no time, man. I like it.
I don't know. I'm not enjoying being old.
You're okay. Are we gonna get into the old conversation? Because you've said it like three
Yes.
fucking times
Yes.
already. I don't
I
know how
am.
old you are. You're in your third. You're not old, dude. We're this is. I feel like VR is making us younger, if anything.
Feel like I'm aging out of VR. It's so sad.
I think that's a
But
good topic.
new topic.
No. Don't skip that topic. Aging out of VR. I think that's a heavy topic, and that is something I'd like to talk about. Why? I'm gonna let you explain first. Why would you say that first? Because that's gonna probably frame this conversation.
Well, I mean, so aging out involves like one your physical age and your overall health, but also as you get older, you have less free time. So like, where do I really want to spend my time?
Mm-hmm.
Now, like a game like Until You Fall, I absolutely love, but I could only physically handle like between 1 and 2 hours. It's somewhere between that 1 and 2 hour mark. I'm covered in sweat and tired,
Mm-hmm.
and it might impact the rest of my day. I'm so tired, so that's like aging out on a physical standpoint. And then there's also like the commitment level. Like I don't play a lot of multiplayer games anymore because there's tons of 13-year-olds in there who are playing 12 hours a day, and I get to play my 30 minutes a day maybe. And in the beginning I start off good, and then 2 weeks later they have 1,000 hours on me and they're crushing me, and I get little to no enjoyment out of it. To have someone get crushed by a bunch of 13-year-olds and then have them squeak at me. So like I'm aging out there too. I don't play as many competitive games because I don't have time to practice. And I used to be so good and so competitive that I just can't handle it anymore. Like psychologically, it bothers me.
Yeah. So I got a lot to say on this topic. So when it comes, I think VR a little bit. I think ages or helps the age range the most out of everything. So when I look at like a traditional game, like a Call of Duty game or something on PC, like what's the average age of a pro gamer? They're like real young. Like they age out at like 25. Like I think 25 on is kind of considered old for esports, which is sad, but it kind of makes sense with mouse and keyboard. It makes sense with how the brain works and what it can do. But something about VR, I find that skill gaps are much different and they're interesting. Like Pavlov, for instance. I play Pavlov quite a bit, right? I took a good 6 months off recently. Like I didn't touch, like you can look at my Steam profile, like I didn't touch Pavlov for a very long time. And recently I jumped back in it on a whim. I don't know why, I just decided let's go. Didn't lose a beat. Back to it. I watch people point their gun at me when I don't watch them because they're behind me. I know someone's behind me because I can hear 3 shots rattle off and whiz past my head. I turn around and I can still see that person take 2 to 3 shots before I pop them. I just sit there and go, this is not a mouse and keyboard. All you have to do is point your gun at me, click the trigger, and you should be able to hit me from 10 feet away. But they don't a lot of times. And I think, well, that's kind of encouraging in a way. That's telling me that the age range of what's acceptable to be competitive probably is a lot wider in VR than it is in traditional gaming. It tells me that, like, this is a skill, and it's a skill that is more physical than it is anything else mental. And because of that, the older I get, probably I can stay more competitive longer. And I actually thought that was encouraging, and I thought VR gaming, you'd age out of slowly, putting aside the physical limitations. Mentally, I think, Mateo, you got longer to go in VR than you would in traditional gaming if you'd like to be competitive. I know that was a long anecdotal story, but it's just something I thought about last night when somebody just couldn't kill me no matter what. And I'm like, this isn't anything other than a skill level here. And I think any range could do it.
You know what? There is yes and no. Like, I will agree with some aspects. Like, there is the time commitment. Like, a lot of highly competitive games come down to learning the map, your sight lines, like knowing where guys are going to try and pick you off from. So, and that just comes with experience and gameplay time. So I don't really have as much time for that. That's not physical limitations. That's, just time. But there are other games like, so like Blast On. After a couple rounds of Blast On, I might be getting a little winded. which is going to prevent me from like ducking down like a crazy person and dodging bullets, and then I'm going to start losing. So yes, I do agree that aim-wise, it's much closer to a real gun. It is definitely different in keyboard and mouse. But I think like you could say the same about some people. Like I can get in a game of Call of Duty right now. I haven't played in God knows how many years because that series went to crap. But I'm sure I would be like average if I went in right now. Even with people who've played like 100 hours, I would jump in right now, no experience, and be average because I used to be so good. So I think like you lose some of it. It's a little bit different. It's not exactly the same, but I think it definitely does. The one thing you get from VR that you don't get from keyboard and mouse is that translates to real life skill.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it's more like, like just rather than your twitch aim skill and how quickly your, brain responds, it's a lot more because, Pavlov, you are dropping in a clip. Every single gun reloads differently. So if you're familiar with the gun, stuff like that. But I went to the shooting range a month ago for the first time in my life to shoot handguns. I fired shotguns in the past a lot, but never a handgun. And my buddy who shoots all the time was really impressed. And I'm like, dude, I've never fired a handgun before. And he's like, well, you're doing it well. So it definitely translates.
I'd be interested once, because sword play, let's talk sword combat, like for instance, and then something multiplayer. And I feel like with this conversation of aging out, I know we're focusing on multiplayer games, but I think it's pretty universally understood that a single player experience is fairly, you're going to be able to play it whenever you want forever, depending on the physicality of that game. But I can't think of any single player VR games that the physicality will stop you from playing a little bits of time at, a piece.
Yeah.
But when it comes to multiplayer games, there is a ceiling where there's a reason why pro gamers are 25 or under usually. But swordplay is going to be something I'm also very interested to see how that plays out in the future. Once it becomes less wiggle stick and more physics-based swordplay with feedback that feels more realistic, that's going to be an interesting dynamic, because I don't think it's going to matter your age. How many people are good naturally with swordplay? Unless you, very little, right? And that's going to be an interesting skill to see how that develops. Is that dependent on your age? I'm going to say physically, probably a little bit, but mentally, swordplay can be almost chess-like, very chess-like, and I'm gonna word this wrong, but chess, that age that comes with knowing and playing it over and over again, you get better very quickly. So I gotta imagine swordplay is gonna be something interesting that I think the older crowd can age into very well. But yeah, I hate the physical aspect. That sucks. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say swordplay definitely cool. And there are a lot of finesse aspects to it too. Like even if you're just fencing, rapiers, that's not strength based. Again, if you're overweight, out of shape, old, it would probably limit you. But nothing replaces skill. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and then going on the physical side, real briefly, I've never thought about it until you brought it up here, and it's an interesting dynamic that I can't think of any other products that I have tech-wise and gaming-wise specifically actually get harder to use the older you may get. It's an interesting dynamic that I don't know what the average age of a gamer is, but I would say in VR, I feel very confident based looking at analytics reports that the average age right now is about 18 to 34 in use. It's a wide range, but I think it's pretty safe to say on that. But let's talk about those 34. It's what other hardware that's pretty expensive that you're going to put a lot of time in and build a lot of investment and emotional investment in, will it get harder and harder to play the older you get? That is a little...
Yeah.
I hope developers think of that as time moves on, that you actually can age out your own users. Hit that subscribe button to stay on top of the daily clips, or catch the debates and fireside chats live on the main channel down in the video description. See you next time, Space Cowboys.